Hi everyone, this is Kayla and I am back sharing my last layout as the guest designer for June using the June Click Kits. So for this last project I wanted to do a mini album of sorts. This is kind of, I guess, what I would consider a mini album, although it's not made up of pages but rather envelopes. So what I'm showing you right now actually is me putting together an envelope that I cut out using my silhouette. And in this project, I use 4 different envelope types, all of which are from Paige Evans' silhouette store. So what I've done is cut the 4 different types out. I've stitched with gold thread around the edges, and then I used double-sided adhesive to put them together. And then I added a Velcro piece that I had in my stash so that the envelopes will stay closed when they're not being looked at. And the Velcro came from Michael's, so you should be able to get it in any of your craft stores. So what I'm doing right now is, well, I guess I should back up. The idea behind this is I wanted to create a letter to my son for each month of his first year. So he was born in February, and he's about 4 months old right now, so I should have 4 letters to him. And each month I just want to write kind of what I am thinking about as far as how he's developing and just my thoughts on being a mother because he's my first child. And I thought it would be cute to just do 12 envelopes, and then each month I can put a new letter in there for each month of his life. So what I was showing you there is I went through and I cut out some pieces of paper. I ended up getting my measurements a little off, so they're kind of a little short compared to the length of the envelope, but I was fine with it. I wasn't going to go back through and cut a whole bunch more. So at this point, I've cut 12 envelopes from the pattern papers in the kit. The one I was just showing you with the gold foiled flowers is actually a specialty paper from the kit. And then I did pull in a piece of craft cardstock, clear acetate, and a striped acetate from my stash. Well, I guess in a couple pieces of vellum too. But otherwise, all the pattern cardstocks are from the kit. And so I have the 12 envelopes, and then I just cut out 12 pieces of paper, and I went ahead and stitched around each of the squares with gold thread as well. And then I wanted something to house them. I thought about putting them on a ring or in some sort of little binding system, but I wanted the envelopes to kind of be easily accessible and not have to be stuck to something, so you could take one envelope at a time if you wanted. So what I decided to do is I'm going to make just a little box for them. So with that, this video is quite long. I guess I should have mentioned that back at the beginning. But I wanted to show you everything I did as far as the steps to make the box. So that's why it's so long. But I do have a flip through at the end of the video if you'd rather just go through the end and see the flip through and not see the entire process of making the box for the envelopes. So what I've taken here is just a piece of chipboard. It's actually like the chipboard that you would get if you ordered paper from like scrapbook.com, Cherry on Top, whatever. The chipboard they put in the back to stabilize the paper so that it doesn't get bent. I just save those, and then you can use them for mini albums. It's free. Well, I mean, you're purchasing product, but the chipboard comes with your product you're already purchasing, so it's essentially free. So I didn't provide specific measurements for this because I really just went off the size of my envelopes. So I just made sure that they were a little bit bigger than my envelopes. So the first 2 pieces I cut were for the front and back of the box. And again, I think you saw me, I just kind of laid them down and made sure it would fit. as far as the height goes, the width I kept just a little bit shorter because I wanted the envelopes to be able to pull out pretty easily, so I didn't want you to have to dig into the box to get them. So the edges of the envelopes will stick out just a tiny bit. Um, and then based off of the front and back, that's how I knew the measurements for the top, the bottom, and the back side. And so what I'm actually going to end up doing is you can pull the envelopes out from the side. So I was trying to figure out what to cover my box in. I had pretty much used all of the 12 by 12 pieces of paper in the kit. So I needed something big enough that could go around it. And I went into my stash and I found a specialty pack of denim from We Are Memory Keepers that I hadn't actually used yet. And so I thought it would go really well. The denim look is great with kind of the, I don't know if I want to say country, but kind of country-ish feel of One Canoe Two's collection. Or maybe more rustic is the best word to say. So I thought I would just go with the regular old denim, no pattern or anything. And so what I'm doing now is I'm using a little bit of Tyvek. It's kind of a very, very thin paper material. You wouldn't have to do this part if you wanted to just cover it in regular pattern paper. You could just do this first part and be done with it. But because I knew that denim would probably be a little bit harder to get stuck down to the chipboard, I went ahead and covered it in this thin paper first, so the thin paper will actually hold the box together, and then I'm going to wrap the denim around it as just more of a decorative piece. So what I've done is torn this envelope up so it's basically just one sheet, one sheet on the paper. I'm cutting out now all the excess that I don't need, and kind of showing you right here how the top and the sides are just going to fold up. So I got rid of a lot of the excess off of the sides. And I'm kind of trying to figure out here what's the best way to put it together. And then I'm cutting the sides so that they'll fold up nicely and you'll have a crisp corner. And then on the edges that I'm going to fold up onto the chipboard, you kind of want to get rid of the excess so that you don't have a bunch of bulk on the corners. So I cut just a little bit in so that it's not exactly flush with the chipboard when you fold it up, but so it's just a little bit on the inside. And I think you'll see better here once I fold it up. And I'm using double-sided tape. You could use an ATG as well, but I find that it's a little bit stronger that way than like a liquid glue. And so that's why I'm using that. So here we go. I folded it up so you can see that it's not flush with the cardstock at a 90-degree angle. It's more like a 45. That way on the edges and the corners you get nice crisp corners, and it's not super bulky. So I'm doing that to both the sides here, and these pieces are the front and the back of what will be the box. I'm just cutting excess amounts as I go, and I do try and pull it up so it's pretty taut when I fold it over. And then I'm getting just the inside pieces of the top and the bottom. And then these excess pieces here, when I fold it all up, will wrap around to the side pieces. So hopefully that makes sense. It's kind of difficult to explain, but that's why I wanted to keep all of the pieces in the video here so that you could see, at least be able to see what I'm doing, and hopefully it would make more sense. But then I realized before I do that, I want to add some kind of just something to the back of the folder, just to give it some interest. So I'm poking some holes here so that I can add some string later on. I'll wait and do that once I get it all put together, but I realized it would be easier to get the holes poked before I fold it all up. And again, I'm not really using exact measurements. I'm just placing things where I think they'll look nice, and mainly based off the size that I've worked with here to do the album or the envelopes. So I'm just folding it up and then attaching it or adhering it on the sides so that it holds it together. Making sure my corners are fairly straight. And I didn't point out, but you'll notice I left just a tiny gap between all the pieces when I glued it down to the envelope. And that's so that when you fold it up, you have room for the chipboard to fold. Otherwise, if it's right on top of each other, it doesn't create a very smooth edge to your album. So here we go. I've got my little box. That's the generic, or not generic, that's the general sense of how it's going to go. And then here I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. I want to try and cover it all with the denim as one piece, which I know I can do because I just did it with the Tyvek. And so, and this denim is 12 by 12, by the way. So like I said, if you have a 12 by 12 pattern paper, you could do the part I just did with the black Tyvek paper and just be done. But if you wanted to do something with like a specialty paper like I am, then you might want to consider doing a thin paper first and then adding your specialty paper. So this is basically what I do. Excuse me. I start with about a T shape. I'm going to end up marking, I just set it down and then I mark where I need to put my box so that I can get the paper to wrap around both the top and bottom sides. So again, here we go, I'll show you. I'm doing that, I'm placing it down, and then making sure I can wrap everything up and cover it all the way around on 3 of the sides. And again, I'm doing just like I did with the black Tyvek. I'm cutting out just little chunks so that when I fold it up, it's not completely flush with the sides, but rather angles in a little bit. And I will show you here a little bit better how I'm folding it. So then I'm going to go ahead and do the tops and the bottoms. Again, just adding strong double-sided adhesive. And I just fold it up flat. Again, cutting an angle, and then I will fold the flap up inside and then fold the 2 side flaps on the outside ridge of the envelope or the box. Alright, so there we go. I've done the side. Well, I've done both sides and then folded it up inside as well. So then I'm going to go do the other side so that all I have left to do is wrap around the final piece. So I'm showing again here. And I'm being pretty liberal with the adhesive, in case you haven't noticed. I just want to make sure that once I get it done, it stays nice and in place. And as I'm wrapping it around each side, I am pulling the paper or the denim fairly tight so that it is a nice, clean, crisp edge and isn't going to be kind of floppy or loose on the box. Again, just cutting off little chunks so that it'll fold up nicely on the corners. And then when I go to do the next part, because I've left extra on the other pieces to do the flaps here to attach to the back where I'm putting glue, there's going to be excess when I finish wrapping it around. So I do end up folding that down just under so that it creates a smooth surface and I don't have a bunch of extra hanging out. I thought about just cutting it, but I realized if I would fold it, like I'm doing here underneath, it actually will give it a much smoother edge, and I wouldn't have to worry about fraying or anything like that. It just looks a little bit more cleaner. So I'm just folding it under and then adhering it down, and I cut off most of the excess so that it really didn't provide too much extra bulk. So I've got the last piece covered here. Again, just put lots of extra tape. And I hope that you're able to see this. Like I said, it's difficult to explain, so I'm trying to show as much of the process as I can. And I did speed it up quite a bit, but I also know that even sped up, it was quite a long video. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll do my best to answer. But hopefully you've been able to see most of the process of how I made the box. So I just got this last little bit. Every time, like I said, you fold up another flap, you cut off a little bit of the corner so it's not exactly smooth. And there we go. So I'm just finishing poking the holes through the denim. I've made a little handmade tassel here, just with a yellow tassel, three charms, excuse me, from my stash. I added a little charm to the tassel that says love, and then I added a heart charm, which was from a Paige Evans Oh My Heart collection, and then I added a circular, I think it says XOXO charm, which is from Maggie Holmes' new Sunny Day collection. So those three things were just from my stash. And then I'm taking some white embroidery thread and just running it through and putting a knot on both sides so that it can't slide and have the weight of my tassel pull it down. And then on the other two sides, I'm just going to do a bare string of kind of a corally embroidery thread. And then I'm tying them off and leaving the knots on the outside just to kind of give it a little bit more of a handmade look. And I think it kind of goes with that rustic feel of the June kits. And again, the embroidery thread is from my stash. Just getting it so it lays how I want it to here. Okay, I didn't show you, but off to the left you can see that the front has some white spots on it. I just took some Delusions white paint and added some water, and then just took a paintbrush and did some splatters. And then I did some larger splatters as well. So I wanted to just give it a little bit more of a, oh, I don't know what you'd call it, just some more interest to the front other than just the plain denim. I guess kind of dirty it up, I guess, a little bit. And then what I'm doing now is I'm numbering each of the envelopes, and I'm using this this alphabet from my stash. It's a I think it's from the Wonder collection, and I'm trying to use all the numbers so that I can number my envelopes. And as you can probably see, I ran out of numbers, so I do end up going through and using some of the eyes for 10 and 11. And then the only problem I ran into is I did not have another 2 to finish out 12. So I come back to that later, but I do end up finding another alphabet, or alpha set, or thicker set, that is, it's a Maggie Holmes collection from a long time ago. I think it might be from Shine. It was actually just like icons, but then there is some numbers in it as well. So I use that on the last card. But again, I do that off camera. So what I'm doing here is just to add a little something besides just the number. I am going through the 2 ephemera packs from the kits. One is from Goldenrod and one is from Dear Lizzie. It's all good. And I'm just pulling out one piece from each and then adding the number on it in a different fashion, just to give it something so that the numbers aren't completely floating. And I was actually really impressed because the chipboard, for being chipboard, these numbers were actually really sticky, and I think had I not even put glue on them, they would have stuck just fine. But because I knew that I wanted these to stand or stay on the envelopes for quite some time and be able to pull the envelopes out and might take a little bit of a beating, I went ahead and just added extra glue to be safe. And so I go through, and I don't have you watch me do all of them, but I just kind of want to show you what I'm doing, or kind of an idea of some of them. And I am, again, adding the double-sided adhesive just to the ephemera piece, and then using my liquid glue in my fine line bottle to adhere the number. And it is a, I use Scotch quick dry tacky glue. I think this is the last envelope here, just so you kind of get an idea of how I'm putting these together. I got a little bit of white paint on that envelope, but I decided it didn't matter. Just add some character, right? So I've got all the numbers on at this point, and I'm going to work on my cover. So these little frames came in the kits this month, and then I've also pulled out some ephemera pieces that I want to add to the front. I did mostly the fruits, the lemons, and the strawberries. And then I also pulled out some of these pink flowers. I fussy cut them from the page that had all the peaches in the kit from Dear Lizzie. And I had some left over from the last layout that I just did. And so I'm going to add a few of those on there. These flowers are from Prima, and they're also in the kits. So I add one of those just to bring in another pop of yellow, because I liked how the yellow lemon looked on the blue denim. And then the gold thickers that say I love you are the alpha from the kit. And then the PS is just from my stash. It's the light pink alphas from Paige Evans' whimsical collection. So this is basically the setup of how the front of my little box is going to be. I'm going to go through and make sure everything's glued down. And I think I kind of forgot to pull out some of this. Sorry about that. So this is just, again, gluing it down. And then once I get everything glued down, I'm going to go back through and add some of these puffy stickers, because I had 2 spots of yellow at the bottom of the frame there, and I felt like I needed to bring in a third bright yellow piece at the top to get that visual triangle going on. So I brought in another lemon slice, and then I decided I wanted to add a couple more puffies as well. So I thought about that heart, but it's just a little too tiny, so I thought it got a little lost. And I thought, well, since I'm doing strawberries as well, I'll bring in this little mason jar of strawberries, and then I pull off a little pink, light pink strawberry as well. So that's the cover. Get all my envelopes in there. So that's how it's looking so far. And now I want to go ahead and cover the inside of the box to kind of make it a little bit more just clean looking. So I figured you're not really going to see the inside that often, but if, somebody wanted to look at it and they took all the stuff out, I just wanted it to look nice. So, I'm kind of just doing some measurements here, and again, I'm just going based off of what I've made for the box here. Nothing is very thought out ahead. I'm just kind of going with it. And I'm trying to do the inside with as few pieces as possible so that I can go ahead and have it look as clean as possible, just like the outside. The fewer pieces I can do it in, the better it's going to look, or at least that's what I feel. So I'm trying to do at least 3 sides with just one piece, and then I'm going to do the back of the box and the 4th side with another. So I managed to do it in just 2 pieces, which I thought was about as good as I could get with what I had, since I only have 12 by 12 cardstock. So I'm going through and I'm folding all of the edges. And I got one side measured just off a little bit, and so that kind of throws off 2 of the sides. But in the end, you don't really see it. And these pen marks are going to be on the side that gets adhered to the box, so you won't see the pen marks either. But I'm going to do similar to how I did the outside of the box with the denim and leave edges on the bottom there that I'm going to add adhesive to. So again, I've cut out a little piece or a little triangle so that I can fold those up and it won't be super bulky. And then I'm going to cut off just a little bit so that it ends or cuts off right on the inside of the box. So I went ahead and refolded it in the spots that made it so it actually fits, as my measurements were just a pinch off. And then here I am going to get the last piece measured, or the second piece measured. Again, I'm just using my fingernail, add a little mark with how based off what I just cut, so that I can make sure I get all the pieces right. And then I'll go ahead and cut that out and fold that up as well. Using my bone folder, or little tool there, to score the pages to make sure that it is nice and crisp fold. So I went and put a bunch of glue on the back side of this, and then I'm going to carefully set it in there and get the little edges adhered to the back of it first, and then I'll go and smooth out the rest of it on the sides. Takes just a little bit of finagling, but I get it there. And then I take the other piece and pretty much do the same thing. I'll add a bunch of adhesive and then just stick it in there. So I've got the adhesive on it, plop it in there, and voila. Looks much cleaner and is consistent with the rest of the little mini album that I got going on here. And at this point, I didn't really mention, but there is quite a bit of extra room in the box, but I plan on having quite a bit of dimension for each month's letter. So for example here, the first month I've written the letter to my son about what I wanted to talk about. I created it kind of like a little book. That's why I had all the pieces of pattern papers in each envelope. So I just sewed it along there. And then here we go. I'm just adding a picture on the very last page. I'm going to add a picture of us during each month after I write the letter. So each month I'm going to have this little booklet. I'll decorate the front page there. I'll write my letters on the next pages, and then I'll add a picture on the last page. And then I've gone through and I did get a bunch of paper clips from my stash so that I can kind of just paper clip the little booklet together for each month. So on the front here, I've just kind of decorated it so that it had just something other than white cardstock. Added just a little chipboard heart, and then stuck it back in the envelope. And so here I'm just showing that I've went through my stash and picked out paper clips for the rest of the month so that once I write the letter and add my photo, I can just go ahead and clip it on there. So the last thing I'm going to do here is add like a little, oh, I don't know what you want to call it, just a little clasp around the edge with a button so that I can tie some string and make sure that the envelopes are going to stay in place. So I just poked a hole in the back and poked a hole in the front. Again, just kind of eyeballed it like I have with the rest of the box. And I'm struggling a little bit to get the thread in here because I used a fairly thick embroidery thread. And I'm going to just sew on a button to the front. And then that way I can wrap the string around it to create kind of a closure. So we're going to put a lot of knots in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and double knot the string for the back and then just pull it through so that the knot will stop it from coming out completely. And then I'll be able to wrap it around the button. And that's the last thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to have a little flip through going through the album here coming up, as well as some pictures. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I know it was a long video, but I wanted to make sure you could see everything I was doing. And I love the way it turned out, and now I can go ahead and write a letter to my son for every month of his first year. And I ended each letter, or I'm going to end each letter with P.S. I love you, and that's why I named or put the title of it as P.S. I love you. I just thought it was sweet and something that my son can look at in years to come. So here you are. Hope everyone has a great day and a great rest of your week, excuse me. And I really enjoyed being the guest designer this month, so I hope you are inspired and create your own little mini album. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.